by thus avowing your opinions when such avowal is useless? If every other man in the county who is of your opinion was to express himself, now that your cause is hopeless, as you have done, the prisons would be crowded, the executions would be daily, and the cause would be, in proportion, weakened by the loss of the most daring. Bide your time is a good motto, and I recommend it to you. You must feel that, however we may be at variance in our opinions, Edward Armitage, my hand and my authority never can be used against one to whom I am so indebted, and feeling this, you compel me, in the presence of others, to use a harshness and coldness toward you, contrary, wholly contrary to what, you may believe me when I say it, I really feel for one who so nobly rescued my only child. I thank you, sir, for your advice, which I feel to be good, and for your good opinion, which I value, and which I feel that you deserve, and you shall have, young as you are, my confidence, which I know you will not abuse. I did know this man who now lies dead before us, and I did also know that he was concealed in this cottage. Major Ratcliffe was one of my earliest and dearest friends, and until this unhappy civil war there never was any difference between us, and even afterward only in politics and the cause we each espoused. I knew before I came down here as intendant where his place of concealment was, and have been most anxious for his safety. Excuse me, Mr. Heatherstone, but each day I find more to make me like you than I did the day before. At first I felt most inimical, now I only wonder how you can be leagued with the party you now are. Edward Armitage, I will now answer for myself and thousands more. You are too young a man to have known the cause of the insurrection, or rather opposition, to the unfortunate King Charles. He attempted to make himself absolute, and to wrest the liberties from the people of England. That this warmest utterance will admit. When I joined the party which opposed him, I little thought that matters would have been carried so far as they have been. I always considered it lawful to take up arms in defence of our liberties, but at the same time I equally felt that the person of the king was sacred. I have heard so, sir. Yes, and in truth, for never did any people strive more zealously to prevent the murder of the king, for murder it was, than my relative Ashley Cooper and myself, so much so indeed as to have incurred not only suspicion but the ill will of Cromwell, who, I fear, is now making rapid advances towards the absolute authority for which the king has suffered, and which he would now vest in his own person. I considered that our cause was just, and had the power been left in the hands of those who would have exercised it with discretion and moderation, the king would even now have been on the throne, and the liberties of his subjects sacred. But it is easier to put a vast and powerful engine into motion than to stop it, and such has been the case in this unfortunate civil war. Thousands who took an active part against the king will, when the opportunity is ripe, retrace their steps, but I expect that we have much to suffer before that time will come. And now, Edward Armitage, I have said more to you than I have to any person breathing, except my own kinsman. I thank for your confidence, sir, which not only will not be betrayed, but will act as a warning to guide my future conduct. I meant it should. Be no longer rash and careless in avowing your opinions. You can do no good to the cause, and may do yourself much harm. And now I must ask you another question, which I could not before the other people. You have surprised me by stating that Major Ratcliffe had a son here. There must be some mistake, or the boy must be an impostor. He had a daughter, and only daughter, as I have, but he never had a son. It is a mistake that I fell into, sir, by finding a boy here, as I stated to you at the inquest, and I considered it to be a boy until I brought her home, and she then discovered to my sisters that she was a girl dressed in boy's clothes. I did not give that as explanation at the inquest, as it was not necessary. I am right, then. I must relieve you of that charge, Edward Armitage. She shall be to me as a daughter, and I trust that you will agree with me, without any disparagement to your feelings, that my house will be a more fit residence for her than your cottage. I will not prevent her going, if she wishes it, after your explanation and confidence, Mr. Heatherstone. One thing more. As I said to you before, Edward Armitage, I believe many of these verderers, all of which have been selected from the army, are spies upon me. I must therefore be careful. You said that you were not aware that there were any papers." "I saw none, sir, but I suspect, from the many locked up trunks and small boxes, that there may be. But when I went out with the others from the inquest, I dispatched my brother Humphrey to the cottage, advising him to open all the locks and to remove any papers which he might find." The Intendant smiled. "Well, if such is the case, we have only to go to your cottage and make an examination. We shall find nothing, and I shall have performed my duty. I was not aware that your brother was here. I presume it was the young man who walked with Oswald Partridge?" "It was, sir." "By his appearance I presume that he, also, was brought up at Arnwood?" "He was, sir, as well as I," replied Edward. "Well, then, I have but one word more to say. Recollect, if I appear harsh and severe in the presence of others, it is only assumed toward you, and not real. You understand that?" "I do, sir, and beg you will exercise your discretion." The Intendant then went out and said to the party: "It appears from what I can extract from this lad Armitage, that there are boxes which he removed to his cottage. We will go there to see what they may contain. It is now noon. Have you any refreshment to offer us in your cottage, young man, when we arrive?" "I keep no hostelry, sir," replied Edward, somewhat gloomily. "My own labor and my brother's is sufficient for the support of my own family, but no more." "Let us move on, and two of you keep your eye upon that young man," said the Intendant aside. They then proceeded through the wood, the Intendant mounted his horse, and they set off for the cottage, where they arrived at about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Chapter 17.